This past October, 35 members of St. Michael, myself included, went on a 2-week tour to Israel. This, of course, is looking at the old city of Jerusalem from the Mount of Olives, and there prominently in this picture would be the Muslim Dome of the Rock. While we were in Israel, we were overwhelmed with people selling us souvenirs, postcards, backpacks, purses, trinkets, pictures, you name it. It was always for you, $1. I didn't know this, but the people in Israel, especially the Palestinians, love to wheel and they love to deal. You're my first customer of the day. For you, special price, I make nothing. We were in Bethlehem one night and we walked into a souvenir shop and the owners met us. They said, everything in the store is 50% off just for you. I guess we looked that gullible. I just wanted to say, look, give me your best price, I'll pay it. I'm an American. I don't wheel and deal. I just see a price and I pay it. But after a couple of days hearing, for you, $1, I decided to play the game. So you know how to play the game, right? You've all bought a used car before. Don't look too interested. And when you pick up the merchandise, a souvenir, begin mumbling out loud about all of its defects. And when they offer you a price, what do? You start walking out the door. You see, in Israel, there's one strategy. Never pay the full price. Never pay the full price. That sets the foundation for my sermon this morning. We're in the fourth part of a sermon series on the Gospel of St. Matthew. And this is what we're calling it, developing. That's a huge participle, isn't it? None of us have made it yet, folks. We're all on the way. We are developing from womb to tomb, from baptism through confirmation till death. We are developing, and then, of course, the adjective is very important. Not lackluster. Not half-hearted, not lukewarm, not listless. No, no. Passionate. Passionate. I'm all in. 24/7, 365, till death. The only person who has ever lived who is worthy of that kind of commitment is Jesus. We are developing passionate disciples. And a disciple is a lifelong learner. A lifelong, folks. Developing passionate disciples of Jesus. That's the goal in this sermon series during this joyful Easter season. So, for this service, we consider the idea of devotion. Devotion. If we're talking about developing passionate disciples of Jesus, one characteristic is devotion. Now you say, what's devotion? I'm so glad you asked. It's a Latin derivative, right, of two words. Deo, God, right, in Latin. Votos is where we get the English word vow. So what's devotion? A devotion is to make a vow. Make a vow to who? God. And if you look at the Bible, when people have devotion in the Bible, when they dare to make a vow to God, they are saying exactly this: I am willing to pay the full price. Not going to haggle, not going to barter, not going to finagle. No, I'm not going to walk out the door. I'm going to pay the full price. Now, what does that look like? Jesus tells us in his Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, 6, and 7, this very famous verse, right, in Matthew 6, verse 33. Seek, right, seek, that's a powerful verb, right? It's actually an imperative. It's not optional for the baptized. If you've been baptized, this is God's claim on you. Seek, pursue, run after, passionate, and then this next word. Take a look at that. Doesn't say fifth or 50th or 500. It doesn't even say second or third or fourth. No, the claim, it's a radical claim. Seek first the kingdom of God. And Matthew's gospel is all about the kingdom of God. We've been preaching through Matthew now for the last 6 months. So many of you know the kingdom of God is a major theme in the first gospel in the New Testament. 37 times this idea of kingdom of God comes. And we might think that it's geography or a place, but if we think that, we're completely wrong. The kingdom of God is not a place. It's not geography. If you have a kingdom, you need a king. It's the king's presence in your life and mine. That's the kingdom of God. I want, first and foremost, I want the king's presence in my life. I've got to have the king's presence. If I don't have the king's presence, I will wilt and I will die. That's what we're talking about. So how does the king of this kingdom become present in my life? That would be Jesus. Jesus is the king of this kingdom I'm talking about. Not a place, not a geographical location. No, Jesus wants to reside in my mind, my heart, my life. And Jesus, this king of the kingdom, has shed his blood to forgive us. He's given his life to redeem us. He's risen again from the dead to resurrect us. And holy baptism, these 20 have all been baptized, right? In holy baptism, the king delivers all of the gifts of the kingdom. Joy, purpose in life, a hope and a future. The king in my life means that I have direction at every turn, light for every dark day, and I've got an anchor for every deadly storm. Why wouldn't we want to give this king devotion? Why wouldn't we want to seek first his kingdom? Why wouldn't we want to pay the full price? I'll tell you why. Relationships and possessions. That's what gets in my way. Yours too. Relationships and possessions. So let's take a further look here. Matthew chapter 4 tells us that as Jesus begins his ministry, this is what happened. Great crowds. So throughout Jesus' ministry, he never had a problem attracting crowds. In fact, Matthew uses the word crowds 26 times in his gospel. Jesus always has crowds. In fact, sometimes the crowds are so immense that Jesus has to preach from a boat on the Sea of Galilee. The crowds, as Jesus begins his ministry, they followed him from Galilee and the Decapolis, that's way up north, near modern-day Syria. From Jerusalem, Judea, from beyond the Jordan. Think the state of Indiana. That's the geography that Matthew gives us here. So there are great crowds that follow Jesus, not only in Matthew 4, but throughout Matthew's gospel. But you need to understand something critical about the crowds. They're just looking. They're window shoppers. None of the people in the crowd want to pay the full price. Though the crowds, They want Jesus on their terms, not on his. The crowds want gimmicks and sales techniques and deep discounts. The crowds will not give Jesus devotion. They will not seek first the kingdom. The crowds are unwilling to pay the full price. And what could it cost you? Relationships and possessions. First, relationships. Jesus is speaking to a crowd here, one of the 26 times, right? The word comes in Matthew's gospel. And someone comes from the crowd. See, and as I said, the crowd, they're window shoppers. They're just looking. They're not really that serious. And so one said to him, Lord, let me first go bury my father. And what does Jesus say? Folks, no one in recorded history has ever spoken this way. Jesus says, I take precedence over everything and everyone. Look at this. Oh, let me first go bury my father. What does Jesus say? Follow me and leave the dead to bury their own dead. You see, Jesus takes precedence over every human relationship we have. This isn't gentle Jesus, meek and mild, look upon this holy child. This is the Jesus of the Bible. This is the Jesus of history. This is the Jesus who's alive and has conquered death and the grave. Jesus says, I take precedence over every human relationship. So if my boss tells me to do something immoral, I say, sorry, boss. If my CPA shows me how to rip off people so I can put more in my pocket, I say, sorry, CPA. If a boyfriend wants a girlfriend to have premarital sex, sorry, boyfriend. If my friends want me to get drunk and make a fool of myself, sorry, friends. If my spouse doesn't want me to follow hard after Jesus for our children and grandchildren, sorry, spouse. If my child wants me to do something immoral, sorry, child of mine. It's that radical. It's that revolutionary. There's a part to all of us, right? We're here, we're in church, the 20 here, the 20 confirmants. There's a part to all of us. You're saying something like this. How do I know? I say it. I'm willing to pay a price. I really am. I'll pay a price. I'm just not willing to pay the full price. And this attitude shows up when we allow partners and parents, peers, to take us away from seeking first the kingdom of God by being regular in worship, by studying the Bible, by praying, by being involved in Christian service. You see, the great temptation is to want people to say, to read Lessing, well done. And I want that well done more than the king's well done. So what does Jesus say to the crowds? Someone comes up and says, let me first, I'm going to do something first besides seeking your kingdom. What does Jesus say? Oh, for you, $1. Jesus, he'll bring the price down, right? You tell me. Whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Again, no one has ever made these kinds of claims. Never. Whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. If you're serious about this, and not just window shopping, you need to understand. Devotion to Jesus could cost you relationships, friendships. Second, a devotion to Jesus could also cost you possessions. Jesus says famously in Matthew 16, what will a profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? Jesus is not saying, not saying that you're not supposed to have possessions, right? Possessions are good, they're God's gifts. Jesus says you're supposed to have stuff, but when you own stuff, don't let the stuff own you. Don't let it capture your heart. That's so easy to do, right? We have investments. We check what's going on Wall Street multiple times a day. We have houses. Some of you have plural houses. We've got vehicles and jewelry and clothes, and nothing wrong with all of that at all. But you see, it's so easy for those to take first place. So are you willing to make some changes in your life? Are you willing to stop this insidious thought that you can gain the whole world? Are you ready to declutter and simplify so you're serious about discipleship? Or you're going to ignore the whole thing? Seek first your kingdom. Seek personal promotion rather than devotion. Hard questions, I get that. But these are Jesus questions. I hope you get that too. About 12 years ago, I was here. Probably looks familiar. If you've ever been in San Antonio, Texas, this is what the Riverwalk, right? So the Riverwalk in San Antonio has great Mexican food. So there I was with a bunch of professors, and we were having some great Mexican food, and a Spanish Mexican-speaking band came up and offered to play some music. And for some reason, they directed their question to me. Would you like some Mexican music? And I thought, oh no, I don't even know Mexican music. But I remembered my mom and dad, they loved Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass. So I said, Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass. And the leader said, that'll be $25. And I said in my high school Spanish, no tengo dinero. Which a loose translation might be, I won't pay the full price. Maybe Jesus will come down just a notch or two, right? If we haggle, right? Barter a little bit. Why not go to Jesus and just say today, no tengo dinero? Well, listen closely. Especially the 20 of you. The only reason to pay it all, folks, the only motivation, the only reason we're talking about any of this is because Jesus paid it all. Now, you've been with Matthew, many of you, for the last 6 months, and you know the most important verse in Matthew's gospel. Matthew 20, verse 28. Here it is. The Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. We got to unpack that. The Son of Man. Jesus is speaking about Daniel chapter 7, verse 13. Where the Son of Man is equal to the Ancient of Days, and the Ancient of Days would be God the Father. So the claim of Jesus, when he says Son of Man, he says, I'm God. I'm very God of very God, begotten, not made, being of one substance with the Father. The person who makes these claims on us would be our Creator of heaven and earth, the Son of Man. That's who Jesus is. God himself in the flesh. The Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and to give his life. So Jesus had it all. He's God. Jesus gave it all, his life. The Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve us and to give his life as a ransom. See, ransom. You know what a ransom is? It means you're stuck, you're trapped, you're in prison, and there's no way out. And someone has paid the price. So Jesus had it all, he gave it all, and Jesus delivers it all in the ransom. All of my darkness and my impending death and my depression, Jesus has paid a ransom for that, and I'm free. I'm free. Ransom. Finally, that's all we want to know. Does God really love me? Not on Easter when I have polished shoes and a new suit and tie. But does God love me? Does this ransom really count when I'm a jerk? When I snap at everything that moves? When my mind is in the gutter? Does God even love me then? The Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. Jesus paid it all. Lock, stock, and barrel. Blood, sweat, and tears, and he did it all. Listen closely. He did it all for you. When I was in 8th grade, I would go to a store. None of you have heard this before. It's called Ben Franklin's. All right? Ben Franklin's. Yeah, I know. How many have ever heard of Ben Franklin's? Look at this. Everyone over 80 has heard about Ben. No. No, I'm sorry. Over 40. We'll bring it down by half. But when I was in 8th grade, I had a great plan. And the plan was to go into Ben Franklin's and change all the price tags. Isn't that? Now, some of you are kind of shocked that I would think that way, but don't be shocked. And so the next day, after we changed all the price tags, right, no one would see. There were no cameras in those days. You can do whatever you want to, right? So you change the price tags. And then you'd go on the next day, and Butterfingers, oh, look, they're a penny for a box. I'll take 18 boxes of Butterfingers. Thank you very much. Topps baseball cards. Oh, 18 boxes for a nickel. I'll take 100 boxes. And then transistor radios. Oh, we all want transistor radios. Transistor radios for a dime. What we thought about and what I was planning on doing, Satan, the devil, has done. Oh, he's changed the price tags. Do you understand that? Oh, what we consider priceless, folks, is cheap. What we think is cheap is really priceless. We have such a hard time assigning value to things in life. Well, let me help us then. Matthew 6:33. Seek first the kingdom of God, the presence of the King in my life. Do that first. What does that devotion, that making a vow to God, what does that look like? What does that entail? Here it is on the screens. Where he leads, that's Jesus. I will follow. Where he leads, I will follow. Whatever the price, yeah. Whatever the price. There's a great hymn that brings all of this together. So let's stand and sing it.